Hi, it is Wednesday, and for cruise, we just arrived in Nagasaki, Japan, and this is the welcome we got. Not exactly Japanese music, but they were dressed in Japanese attire. And our first stop was the lookout far above the city. And from this vantage point, it was such a beautiful view. What you're looking at there is what they call the hypocenter, where the atomic bomb was dropped. That little valley up there, just the side of that far mountain. And we're going to go up there later on to see the Atomic Bomb Museum and the Peace Park. There's some really beautiful things up there now. It's a beautiful time of year, lots of flowers blooming. Now, as it's going to pan to the right, and you're going to see the Serenade docked in the harbor across the water. Right there, it's in the middle of your screen now. So we entered the harbor from the right-hand side and docked over there. Nagasaki got an award a few years back for one of the most beautiful panoramic views in the world. And I can understand why. You see all those small islands out there that we sailed through as we entered the harbor. Our next stop was the Atomic Bomb Museum, which is in that area that I showed you. So the museum's actually underneath that domed glass structure. I think those multicolored things are like prayer rags or something, some things they do origami, put them together, and I guess the locals can leave them there for loved ones or whatever that they lost. So as you enter the museum, and you go down a stairway, a kind of a spiral thing to get down into that glass domed area. So the bomb was dropped at 11:02 a.m. on the 9th of August, 1945. And these are pictures that were taken from the B-52 that dropped it. Show what the mushroom cloud looked like. And I've not shared in this video the graphic. There's a lot of graphic pictures and videos inside the museum that are really horrible. So I spared those. But here's a explanation of what happened if you watch this display. The explosion killed about 50,000 people instantly, and another 50,000 were injured or burned, many of whom later also died. War is a horrible thing, but in a way, for me at least, my dad was in the Philippines training to be the first troops to attack the main island of Japan, which had been weaponized, and there were 20 million people ready to fight. So there's no telling how many Americans would have died, and also how many additional Japanese would have died had a land invasion been carried out. The Japanese accepted unconditional surrender very shortly after the Nagasaki explosion.
爆発後1分以内に放出された放射線を初期放射線という透過力の弱いアルファ線ベータ線は地上まではほとんど到達できず実質的に障害を起こすのはガンマ線中性子線でこれらの放射線は人体に多大な被害を与えただけでなく植物の生育にも大きな障害を及ぼした西山地区では放射性の核分裂性生物が集中的に降下した
Just explaining some about the radiation effects and the burning that the fires and whatnot that accompanied the explosion. What I thought was interesting, my perspective, background radiation levels after the explosion returned to normal in about 1 year. Normally people get about 300 millirems of radiation background just from the materials around us and from cosmic radiation, that sort of thing. But for both Hiroshima and Nagasaki, within a year, even though it was a plutonium bomb that was exploded here in Nagasaki, the background radiation was back to what is considered normal. So amazing how Mother Earth repairs itself. And what they did was left all the rubble in place, according to our guide, and just covered it with about 6 feet of soil. So when we go to the Hypo Center and the Peace Park, it's built up over the debris, which is buried 6 feet under where we were walking. And the bomb was dropped from about 27,000 feet, and it exploded about 1,500 feet above the surface. It's a very sobering and humbling experience to see the displays that they have here, what devastation an atomic bomb can cause. And of course, the hope and the whole purpose of this museum is to educate people to try and ensure that it never happens again. And our way out, there was this gigantic spider that crawled across the floor. And I could put my camera on a stick right up close to it. But I don't know what kind of spider that was, but it was a huge one. Anyway, from the Atomic Bomb Museum, we went up to the Peace Park via the Hypo Center. So this is what they call a Hypo Center of the blast. It's a very beautiful park that's there now. There's a monument, monolith granite over black granite you can see straight ahead there. That was the actual Hypo Center. And as I mentioned before, our guide said they didn't get rid of all the rubble, they just covered it up and built this park over it. There is the Hypo Center. And so it's just walking distance from this Hypo Center Park over to the Peace Park, which I'll show you in a minute. There's more of those prayer cloths or whatever they are, origami, multicolored beautiful to look at. Now, just on the other side of the Hypo Center is there was only one young girl that survived being at the Hypo Center, and she was in this bomb shelter right here. She was the sole survivor at the epicenter, and when she came out the day after it exploded, everything was gone, and she was the only one fortunate enough to survive. Okay, this is the entrance to the Peace Park at the beautiful fountain, and then behind it, a beautiful walk through the flowers, and there is a sculpture that's this is it. I think it's something like 30 tons. It's a single pour of bronze that was done by a Japanese artist. Just amazing to me how somebody could do that. But the arm pointing up is pointing up is symbolic of the bomb that came and the handheld level is symbolic of peace. Now, this is the location of the 26 martyrs. At one point, Japan outlawed Christianity, and there were some people who refused to comply. There were 6 foreigners and 20 Japanese who were Christian, and they were crucified at this location. And the last stop was the Glover Garden, and of course, anytime I can stick my camera in a koi pond, I got to do it. So here you go one more time, some koi from the bird's eye perspective. And the last thing you're going to see is a shot of part of Glover Garden, the Glover House in the background. It overlooks the harbor, and so you'll be able to see Serenade moored out there in the harbor. But a beautiful Japanese garden, and just a very pleasant place to spend a little bit of time. So our stay in Nagasaki was educational, it was sobering, it was humbling.
No, I dried it off. It's okay.
And it's definitely a place that I'd love to come back to again because it's such a beautiful place.